Quick disclaimer, information in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended to be treated as medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare team before making changes to your diet, lifestyle, supplementation, or medication.
Dried, canned, juiced, or fresh. Not all fruit is as innocent as it seems. Let's uncover the ones that could be sabotaging your blood sugar efforts.
Welcome to Type 2 Diabetes Talk, the place where we chat about what really works to treat type 2 diabetes and prediabetes naturally with nutrition and lifestyle. If you're looking to optimize blood sugar and A1C, lose weight, reduce medications, and improve your overall health, this is the place to be. Now, here's your host, Type 2 Diabetes Nutrition Specialist, Dr. Jetta.
Hello and welcome to episode 84. Fruit. It's often considered a healthy food, right? Certainly, fruit can be a part of a balanced eating plan, even in diabetes. Fruit is nutrient-dense, containing vitamins, minerals, fibre, and valuable polyphenols and antioxidants. But the thing is, fruit also has a fairly high sugar content. So when it comes to fruit, there are some limitations, which can be a bit disappointing for some people who do love their fruit. Although fruit is a natural food source, it is important to keep in mind that fruit is high in carbohydrates and natural sugar, predominantly fructose. This can be slightly problematic for a few different reasons. All forms of sugar and carbs can increase your blood sugar levels. Natural or not, sugar is sugar, and your body is going to have to deal with that. In terms of fruit, it contains high levels of fructose. Some fruits are much higher in fructose than others. Fructose is a type of sugar that behaves much differently in our bodies than the other types of sugars. It's primarily metabolized in our liver, and the liver, under too much sugar load, turns any excess sugar into triglycerides that get stored in fat cells throughout the body or can contribute to things like fatty liver, among other things. Of course, fructose in added sugar and processed foods is the most problematic contributor to metabolic issues like this, but it's good to have the awareness that fruit is high in sugar and fructose. And whether that's natural sugar or not, it can still negatively impact your blood sugar levels. And that's what we're here to learn about today, the types of fruits to avoid. For our members, I want to mention that there is a detailed fruit guide and printable charts you can find alongside this episode in the members library. Okay, the first fruit we're going to tackle today is not one fruit, but more a fruit category, and that is dried fruit. Dried fruits have been around for thousands of years, loved for their sweetness and their long shelf life. But how do these fruits go from being fresh and juicy to dried? How does this influence their sugar content? And when it comes to dried fruit, are these a fruit to avoid? The process of taking a fresh fruit to a dried fruit can be as simple as air drying in the sun or using more modern methods like dehydrators and freeze drying. Essentially, drying fruit removes the water content, but that does something else. It concentrates the fruit's natural sugars and nutrients into a much smaller package. Many dried fruit products on the market also have added sugar, something people often overlook. And adding sugar to dried fruit makes them sometimes more appealing, especially for fruits that may lose some of their natural sweetness during the drying process, like cranberries, blueberries, and cherries. And sugar also acts as a preservative by inhibiting the growth of microorganisms, and this helps in extending the shelf life of dried fruits. The sugar also helps with keeping the vibrant colour, along with other things. But clearly, choosing dried fruits without added sugar is a better choice, but still, that doesn't mitigate their high sugar content, unfortunately. So let's look closer at the nutrition of dried fruits. So a few pieces of dried mango is 34 grams of carbs, 2 grams fibre and 24 grams of sugar content. That's a lot of carbs and sugar just for a few pieces of dried mango. When we look at a quarter of a cup of dried banana, That's around 26 grams of carbs, 3 grams fibre, 14 grams sugar. Still a significant hit of carbs and sugar for a small quantity of dried banana. When we look at things like raisins and cranberries and apricots, these range from 18 to 33 grams of carbs and 15 to 29 grams of sugar. So again, the dried fruits are full of carbohydrates and sugar. And these high levels of carbs in dried fruit make them problematic for blood sugar control. Let's take some fresh fruits and compare them to dried fruits. We'll start with fresh apricot as an example. One fresh apricot is around 4 grams carbs, 0.7 gram fibre and around 3 grams sugar. It's a good fruit choice. It's low in carbs and low in sugar. Dried apricot is actually about the same for only one piece. While you might eat one fresh apricot and feel satisfied, chances are you're not going to eat one dried apricot. With the sweetness, it's very easy to keep eating a lot more. Dried fruits are considered low to moderate in terms of the glycemic index. The GI of a dried mango is 40 to 60, the GI of dried apricot is 30, and the GI of dried banana is 44. But it's the carbs you need to be concerned about because lower GI or not, if a food is higher in carbs, it can still impact your blood sugar. Dried fruits can provide some fibre, vitamins, minerals and antioxidants to the diet, but the thing to keep in mind is that you can find these nutritional factors in many other foods. So in saying all that, our general recommendation is to avoid or at least minimise dried fruits. The next thing in question is fruit snacks and rolls, which are obviously a no-no. Now, you may think it's strange that I mention this at all, but it's surprising how many people think fruit products are healthy options. While marketed as fruit-based, these products usually contain a lot of added sugars along with other ingredients to modify their texture and taste, and they are not healthy foods. For example, one fruit roll-up product I looked at contained corn syrup and sugar as the first two ingredients, along with a whole list of other crap and 12 grams of carbs, 7 grams sugar. Definitely, this is the type of fruity thing to avoid. Many fruit snacks and lollies or candy definitely are other fruity things to avoid as well. Then there's canned fruits. This is another place people get stuck on. A can of fruit may say it has no added sugar and is hosted in 100% juice. That doesn't make it diabetes friendly. For example, a can of pineapple chunks in 100% pineapple juice with no added sugar contains 16 grams carbs, 15 grams sugar for a half a cup serve. It's basically all sugar. Same thing goes for canned mango, peaches, apricots, mandarin oranges, mixed fruit combos, etc. The canned fruits, these are certainly best avoided. There's also another important thing to note in this discussion about fruit. Fruit juice. Fruit juice is jam-packed with hidden sugars and simple carbohydrates that quickly spike blood glucose levels. For example, a single glass of orange juice, just 1 cup, contains 25 grams of carbs and 20 grams of sugar, which is about the same as a can of regular cola. Now that's surprising to many people, and that's 100% juice with no added sugar. So fruit juice is definitely another fruity thing to avoid for optimal blood sugar control.
Dr. Jetta's VIP membership program is the ultimate support system. Built by a diabetes specialist, tested in a clinical trial, backed by world-leading research, and trusted by people around the world for more than a decade. Whether you're newly diagnosed or you've been living with diabetes for years, the time for you is now. Lower your A1C, reduce medications, change your life. Join the program. Visit type2diabetestalk.com/VIP.
Let's drill down on some nutrition facts for the highest carb, highest sugar fruits, which are also the fruits to avoid with diabetes, or at least to minimise quite substantially. Mangoes are the highest carbohydrate and highest sugar fruits. Per mango, you're looking at around 35 to 45 grams of carbohydrate and 30 to 40 grams of sugar. They do contain a good amount of fibre, from 3 to 5 grams, but that fibre is certainly not enough to mitigate the impact of all those carbs and the high level of sugar. Out of all the fruits, mangoes also contain the highest amount of fructose, 32.4 grams. Overall, I'm sorry to say that mango is off the list of foods to eat. Riper mango fruits, can contain even more condensed simple sugars and impact blood sugar even more. For example, in one experiment, a medium ripe mango led to a spike of 25 milligrams per decilitre or 1.4 millimoles per litre, while a very ripe mango spiked blood sugar by 48 or 2.7. And this was in a healthy subject, so in people with diabetes and prediabetes, this spike is likely to be a lot higher. So it goes without saying that mangoes are certainly a fruit that is best avoided with diabetes. Watermelon is the next fruit to avoid. One wedge of watermelon contains around 22 to 24 grams of carbs, 17 grams of sugar, with 11.3 grams of that being fructose, and just 1.1 grams of fibre. Another red flag is watermelon's very high glycemic index of 75. High GI foods like this will certainly cause a sharp rise in your blood glucose very quickly, which is what you want to avoid. In one experiment where a healthy adult ate 8 ounces, which is around 225 grams of watermelon, with around 15 grams of carbs, it led to a spike of 49 milligrams per decilitre or 2.7 millimoles per litre. Now again, this is in a healthy adult, so in diabetes, this spike will likely be much greater. So watermelon is a fruit that is best avoided. The next fruit is a very popular fruit, and that is bananas. Unfortunately, bananas are the next fruit to avoid. One small banana contains around 23 grams of carbs, 12 grams sugars, of which around 7.1 grams is fructose, and 2.6 grams fibre. Bananas have a medium glycemic index of around 55 to 60, but it's really all those carbs that are the biggest issue. So these are best avoided, or at the very least, minimise your portions to a quarter or a half a banana. We often get asked about green bananas or plantains, which unfortunately are still too high in carbohydrates, sugar and fructose. And the cooking increases their glycemic index too. So we encourage people to avoid plantains and green bananas as well. The old saying goes that an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, that may not be so true if you are living with diabetes, as apples are a high carb, high sugar fruit that may negatively impact your blood sugar and insulin function. One small red apple with the skin contains around 23 grams carbs and 19 grams sugars, with around 9.5 grams of that being fructose and around 3.6 grams fibre. Apples can range from 15 to 35 grams carbs and 3 to 5 grams fibre, depending on the apple and its size. While many people think apples are a safe diabetes food, for most people they will see significant spikes. In one experiment comparing green and red apples, the participants started at around 95 milligrams per decilitre or 5.3 millimoles per litre. This was their baseline level. And the green apple raised their blood sugar by 34 or 1.9, while the red apples raised it by 45 or 2.5. So the participants' levels went up to 127 or 7.1 by eating the green apples, and 145 or 8.1 by eating the red apples. Now again, this was a healthy participant without diabetes who also saw that the red apples spiked their blood sugar above the ideal range. So with diabetes, you may see a much higher spike, and of course, it's dependent on your baseline starting levels as well. Similar to apples, pears are high in carbs, sugar and fructose. One small pear is around 22 grams carbs, 14 grams sugar and 11.8 grams fructose, with 4.6 grams fibre. In one experiment in a person with type 2 diabetes eating a pear, it actually had minimal impact. In another experiment, eating a pear caused a spike of around 60 milligrams per decilitre or 3.3 millimoles per litre from baseline. In that same experiment, the pear was paired with a source of fat and it had very little impact on blood sugar. And we are going to talk about a few tips on reducing the impact of sugar intake from fruits very soon. Oranges are another fruit that often needs to be avoided. One navel orange contains around 18 grams of carbs, 12 grams of sugar and 3 grams fibre, and a medium amount of fructose, 6.1 grams. And sorry to say, but oranges are not great in terms of blood sugar control. In a couple of experiments, the spike from eating one orange was around 40 or 2.2. When it came to orange juice, it produced a 20% higher response. Some experiments have also indicated that oranges, and perhaps other fruits, lead to a longer sustained blood sugar effect with higher levels over a number of hours. And again, just to point out that the thing to keep in mind is that with lots of experiments, they're done in healthy people. So people that don't have insulin resistance or blood sugar issues already. Grapes are another fruit to be aware of. In terms of nutrition, 20 grapes is around 18 grams of carbs, 15.5 grams of sugar and very little fibre, less than 1 gram. The sugar in grapes is predominantly fructose, around 12 grams. And experiments with grapes and blood sugar vary. And like we saw in the experiments with pears, the experiments with grapes and blood sugar also vary. In one experiment, the rise was around 35 or 1.9. In another, it was 83 or 4.6. Then in other experiments, there has been minimal impact on blood glucose response. So what we can take from these experiments is that when it comes to fruits, they can have a different response in different people. So if you want to test suitable fruits for you individually, it's best to use a glucose monitor to test how any particular fruit influences your blood sugar levels. Okay, we've just covered the highest carb, highest sugar fruits. And before we talk about better fruit choices and ways to reduce the blood sugar spike from fruit, let's hear a testimonial from one of our members.
Karen said, "After joining DMP, I was able to get my A1C down from 8.1 to 6.4 in a matter of a few months and lost 15 pounds. My fasting blood sugars were ranging from 150 to 180, and now they are between 90 to 130. The wealth of educational material has been a game changer for me, and the food is creative and delicious. Thank you for making my lifestyle change enjoyable and doable, and giving me a renewed way of living with diabetes in a positive way."
So what about better fruit choices? While we're not going to go into this in detail, as this is the episode about fruits to avoid, and we've just covered those, but let's just shortlist a few of the best fruit options. Go for citrus like lemon and lime, fresh berries like raspberries, cranberries, cherries or strawberries, guava, a few slices of cantaloupe melon, otherwise known as rock melon, passion fruit, kiwi fruit, mandarin, plum, or apricot. And here are 2 important points to keep in mind. The first thing is portion size. When it comes to fruit, get your sweet fix in small portions. If you do not portion control, you'll find your blood sugar will be negatively affected. It's best to choose the fruits I just mentioned, but it may be okay for you to eat half a small apple or half a small pear. Some people can tolerate that. Not everyone, but some people can. And when eating fruit, think about the carb content and limit it to a maximum of 10 grams per serve, because remember, there are simple sugars in fruit that you want to minimise. And you don't want to be eating too many servings of fruit throughout the day. It's best to stick to just one serve a day in appropriate portion sizes. Secondly, here's a great blood sugar tip. Eat your fruit with a source of protein or fat. This will help prevent those blood sugar spikes, slowing down the uptake of sugars from the fruit. For example, pair your fruit with cottage cheese, cheddar cheese, or a small handful of nuts or a tablespoon of nut butter. And this will help minimise or even mitigate those blood sugar spikes. So, here's a quick recap of fruits to avoid. Dried fruits. Raisins, mango, banana chips, dates. All dried fruits contain condensed amounts of simple sugars. Fruit juices, even 100% juice, canned fruits in juice or syrup, packaged fruit snacks and fruit rolls, and high sugar fruits like mangoes, watermelon, bananas, apples, pears, oranges and grapes, unless you eat them in small moderated portions and also test to see how they individually affect you. So let's wrap this up by coming back to a simple truth. Yes, fruit can be healthy, but not all fruit is friendly for blood sugar. With diabetes or pre-diabetes, your goal is to lower insulin demand, reduce blood sugar spikes, and support your liver, metabolism and weight. And high sugar fruits, whether natural, dried, juiced or canned, can interfere with that goal. Ultimately, fruit isn't off the table completely, but certain fruits are best avoided or at least minimised, especially if your blood sugar is still too high or you're trying to bring your A1C down without medications. It's okay to be selective with choices. In fact, it's smart, but you need to know your options and your limits. So I hope this episode has helped clear up at least some of the confusion about fruit. For our members, there will be a detailed fruit guide and printable charts you can find alongside this episode inside the members library. That's all for now. Dr. Jeddah, over and out.
Thanks for tuning in to Type 2 Diabetes Talk. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. And for episode replays, episode notes, and more, visit type2diabetestalk.com. New episodes are available Tuesdays, 10 a.m. US Eastern Time, or your time zone equivalent. Thanks again. We're truly grateful to be a part of your life and help make a real difference.